Okay, here we have a 2008 BMW 528 Xi. This engine is the normally aspirated inline six-cylinder. This is the N52. This is just the conventional port fuel injection, not direct injection. There's no turbocharger on this engine. This engine runs very smooth and very well. It has well over 100,000 miles on it. And the owner religiously changed their oil once a year using the recommended synthetic oil. And as you can see, that valve train is absolutely spotless. And here we see the intake camshaft, and here we see the Vanos system that's controlling the opening of the intake valves to throttle the engine. Absolutely clean, no problems, no ticking, no problems at all. The rails right here that normally break and come apart are just fine. This is what happens when we change the oil regularly. As we move around and take a look, here we see the exhaust camshaft. Now, its bearing cap is one piece that captures it. Obviously, the force of the follower and the spring is pushing up against the camshaft. This is a nice unique design where, of course, the upper bearing surface is actually separate from the cylinder head. Here we see the spark plug wells. We carefully blasted them out with compressed air with the plugs still in. We're going to replace the 6 spark plugs and install a new valve cover. Okay, here we see our new valve cover from our friends at A1 Auto Parts. Now, there's quite a bit involved with this valve cover. Here I see my new Vanos motor gasket. Here we see the bracket. Now this is the positive crankcase ventilation system, and we don't want to put any type of vacuum hose on this fitting. There's not a vacuum hose that goes there. This is just simply a vent. Here we actually see the passage going to the intake manifold. And what this is a type of regulator that regulates the degree of vacuum in the crankcase. Here I see my 2 liquid vapor separators. Here we see our gaskets there for the spark plug well. There is my new gasket. Now you'll notice that this valve cover comes with all of the bolts except the 2 bolts for the Valvetronic motor mounting, and sometimes it helps to loosen this just a little bit here to get this set up. So the only bolts that don't come with it are actually the 3 bolts that hold the Valvetronic motor down. So I have 1, 2, and 3, but everything else is included. Very reasonably priced, ready to go. Alrighty, here we see the old valve cover. This one was leaking oil rather profusely, and it was certainly time. 2008, so here we're looking at 13 years old. I noticed that one of my liquid vapor separator check valves is missing. I don't know if that was from the factory. I don't see it there in the valve train area. I'm going to look real carefully before I go back together. But what's happening here, as we're drawing vapor here from the crankcase, what these sections are doing is separating the liquid from the vapor, and the liquid passes through this check valve back into the crankcase, and the crankcase vapors are going to leave through this passage. And this is the vacuum regulator. There's a diaphragm in there that sometimes fails. This is a cap, just to remind you, don't try and put something on that fitting. This is very difficult to replace by itself and not recommended. And this whole valve cover, they range in price, and we've been real pleased with what we get from A1 Auto Parts. So both our new spark plugs and our valve cover, we're ready to go. Okay, here we are with our 2008 BMW 528 Xi, and we're replacing the spark plugs. Now with the modern platinum electrode spark plugs, or iridium electrode, the actual electrodes do not erode per se, But what about deposits from oil and fuel? And as you can see, I've got considerable deposits here on this spark plug. Now, is this an original equipment BMW plug? Possibly, and that means that this has gone more than 100,000 miles. So certainly I don't have electrode wear per se, but certainly look at those deposits. And here I have my new spark plug, and this is of course the NGK. This is what this engine calls for, which is the N52, and this is the iridium plug. They're the iridium electrode, and usually the center electrode is iridium, and then you'll notice there's a pad on the side electrode. And the idea is, as far as electrode wear is concerned, that's going to be minimal. Now, I noticed that the reach of the new plug doesn't quite match that of the old plug, but this is what it called for. They're from A1 Auto Parts, and we'll see how this one performs. Now, when installing spark plugs, especially into aluminum heads, and on a modern automobile, it's going to be hard to find a cylinder head that's not aluminum. It's a good idea to use a little anti-seize compound. Doesn't have to be a lot, but oftentimes is cheap insurance. Now, I really didn't have much of a problem removing the original plug, but here a little anti-seize will make it a lot easier the next time. Alright, now we've elected to go ahead and replace the spark plugs before we install our new valve cover. Now, of course, before I remove the spark plugs, I carefully blasted each hole clean. And of course, I had oil filling some of these holes. So, of course, the oil's spraying everywhere. I'll have to wipe it down real carefully. So you want to make sure that you don't ingest any type of material or excessive oil in the combustion chamber as you remove a spark plug. Now, as we mentioned earlier, this engine was regular maintained as far as oil changes is concerned with a high quality synthetic oil. And as you can see how clean this engine is well over 100,000 miles. It looks like maybe 3,000 miles, how clean it is. So as we look at the intake valve lobes, they don't see any wear to speak of. Now, of course, you got to realize with this Valvetronic system that I have roller followers. So we have roller followers, and here on the exhaust, again, I have a roller follower and hydraulic lash adjusters, both intake and exhaust. And this is the Valvetronic system. I do not have a conventional throttle valve. I'm actually throttling the engine by controlling the lift of the intake valves. Now, because of this unique design, BMW has kind of recognized some very interesting aspects of fuel economy and efficiency. There, I'm not having to make the engine operate as a vacuum pump all the time and evacuate an intake manifold. However, I do need vacuum for my vacuum brake booster and other devices here on the vehicle. And sure enough, if I look behind the power steering pump, what do I see? A vacuum pump. That's right. It's a engine-driven vacuum pump. Pretty much standard here on many late model cars. All right, now we're ready to install our new valve cover. We purchased this from A1 Auto Parts using their online eBay store, and I see my new Valvetronic gasket. Here, the plastic valve cover includes all gaskets. Now, integral with this valve cover is the little cyclone separators that are separating liquid from vapor, returning the liquid there for our crankcase ventilation system and allowing the vapor there to pass. This is a diaphragm regulator. There isn't anything that attaches here. This stays open. This is just an atmospheric vent. Here, manifold vacuum is applied through this port, and as the vacuum within the crankcase climbs above a certain value, this diaphragm clamps down and starts to regulate or seal. So, their complete valve cover, reasonably priced. $528 for the 500 series. Obviously, you see I've removed all the cowling there, and the you know, the cover there and the well for the windshield wiper. That's all just plastic. Brought it out, have things tied out of the way, so it's pretty much a clear shot to just carefully set the valve cover into place. The surface is nice and clean, and we're ready to go. Okay, here we're ready to set our valve cover in place. Let's see. Pretty good clearance right here. Pretty much a straight shot. Let's see if we can get her in position. And not too bad. This is pretty straightforward. Okay. And yep, looks like we did it. Lays right down, no problem. Now we'll go ahead and use our inverse torque socket and carefully snug things down. And of course I see my little Valvetronic connector popped up, but we'll go ahead and carefully push that back. And there, the connector will help push it into place, and we're ready to go. Alright, here we see our BMW 2008 528xi. Now we replaced the valve cover assembly, set of fresh spark plugs, it's all buttoned up, cleaned up, ready to go. Oil change with the best synthetic liquid moly 5W40 brush oil filter, ready to go back in service with a fresh inspection station. Hopefully a real happy customer.